think before we go to talking about the principles of electoral democracy, let's first understand what electoral democracy is.
Okay.
Now, electoral democracy is actually a form of government. There are many types of democracies in the world, the way people interact with government and their leaders. And one, we have electoral democracy, where actually people exercise their authority to elect representatives through an election.
Yes.
Through the vote or the ballot. So, like in Uganda, we know that every 5 years we renew the mandate of those that we want us to lead.
Oh, yes.
Or that we need to lead us.
That's true.
So, that is a type of democracy. We also have another type of democracy, say parliamentary democracy, which is modeled along what the United Kingdom has. Now, in a parliamentary democracy, we have the head of the government as the prime minister.
That's true.
He is actually the head of cabinet.
That's true.
But he is also the leader of government business in parliament. Now, in such a democracy, parliamentary democracy, the identification of a prime minister does not lie entirely with the people.
Okay.
The people elect representatives who go to the parliament.
Those are the MPs?
Yes, the MPs. And now those MPs caucus. The party with the biggest majority in parliament identifies the leader of government business, who is the prime minister in this case.
Okay.
So, those are some of the types of democracies that we have. And there are quite a number. There is, of course, I think there is another type. There is a parliamentary democracy, there is a presidential democracy, and many other types.
Oh, yes.
But for purposes of our discussion, I would rather we limit it to the electoral democracy, which is the one that Uganda aspires to have.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is every after 5 years.
Yeah, after 5 years.
Oh, yes.
All eligible voters actually go to elect their leaders.
Oh, yes.
Whether it is at district level, constituency level to go in parliament, or presidential level. So, we directly choose who we want to see as our leader.
That's true. It brings me back, actually. We all want to know, fine, that is electoral democracy, but the principles that are governing electoral democracy, mainly in Uganda.
So if we are to look at the principles, then we single out things like elections.
Good.
The regularity of those elections.
Good.
That there has to be a certain specific period within which people elect their leaders.
Their leaders.
Whether it is 4 years or 5 years or 7 years, people have to know in advance that every such often we go and elect our leaders, those people who lead us. Then the other issue that also comes in as far as electoral democracy is concerned is the freedom of, the different freedoms of the citizens. Freedoms of speech, freedom to assemble, that I can assemble, freedom to form a political party.
As long as when I assemble, I'm following the constitution of Uganda.
Exactly.
I'm following the rules that govern us.
As long as you're within the confines.
Oh, yes.
And for Uganda, you very well know that there is a law that governs, for instance, assembly.
That's very true.
The Public Order Management Act. So, you have to fall within the ambit of the laws and guidelines that actually facilitate you to assemble. Of course, we have things like freedom of the media. The media should exercise its freedom to report. It shouldn't act under duress. And that also denotes a characteristic of an electoral democracy. You should have actually an independent election management body that is put there, that has the confidence of the people to run and organize elections You should actually have independent institutions of government. You should have a parliament. You should have, of course, the executive, and you should have an independent judiciary on the other side. So those are some of the tenets or characteristics that would actually show you that a society is under an electoral democracy.
For my viewer, to whoever is watching my STV, where does CCEDU come in that kind of setting?
Yes, you see, for electoral democracy is about people electing their leaders. And for people to exercise that authority to elect their leaders, they need to be informed. Now, this is how CCEDU comes in. One, we run ongoing voter education and voter mobilization campaigns. Now, because it is important that when you are going to actually cast your vote, you should know who is actually contesting for what seat. You should know what their manifestos are.
And what
are the issues that they stand for. Because many of the people actually get moved by the appearances of people.
That's very true.
But so and so, looks very nice, and therefore I will vote for that one. So and so has a very nice suit that is putting on, I will vote for that one. Oh, the other lady is beautiful, I will vote. That is not what you're supposed to follow. Actually, when we talk about democracy in itself is a competition of ideas.
Good.
So people are supposed to put ideas on the table that are supposed to help you determine
who has the
best menu, so that then you eat from that menu. But that hasn't yet come up in our societies. Now that is why CCEDU comes in to say, look, we must tell and teach our people that one, we identify our leaders through elections. Not through wars, not through coup d'etats like we are seeing in some countries, not through, machinations of toppling people. We agreed according to our 1995 constitution to identify our leaders through elections after 5 years. Now, once we have taught people to come to a common understanding that we identify our leaders through elections, then we go to the next level. That these elections are so important that they can not only be left to politicians. We the citizens who are not in political offices, who do not have political ambitions, we must be at the center of these elections. So then we move to the next level to teach these people on how to participate. What do you need to do before you actually participate in an election? You need to register to vote. You need to be 18 years old. You need to know where you're going to vote from. You need to know the candidates that are standing. You need to know their manifestos, and you have to make a choice based on that entire package. So that is how CCEDU comes in, to teach people to be civically conscious, to be aware of the electoral environment, but also to ensure that they meaningfully participate in these elections.
Well, that is great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chrispin Kaheru. Whoever is watching us, you are on STV, and we are in the box. I have Mr. Chrispin Kaheru from CCEDU. Does Uganda have a democratic participation in the electoral process?
Well, that is, it has been under a lot of debate. Whether Uganda actually facilitates democratic participation. And I'll say, in terms of the laws, you have the law, the basic laws that would actually qualify Uganda to be a democracy. You have laws that show us that every 5 years we will go to an election. You have laws that actually separate the organs of government. You have laws that promote the independence of these government organs, the executive, the parliament, and the judiciary. You actually have laws that operationalize these institutions to work. You have political parties.
Oh, yes.
You are under a multi-party system.
That's very true.
Now, when you look at most of these things, they would actually show you that, well, Uganda actually has all the basic minimum standards of a democracy. The question has always been whether this that we see actually means that Uganda is a democracy. Because when it comes to activating what those laws are supposed to deliver in practical terms, you see a deviation. I'll give you an example.
Oh, yes.
You have, you're under a system that says that all these organs of government must be independent. The
Which I think they are.
The executive and the judiciary.
They are.
But I'll give you an example. Just last year, on not one occasion, on more than 2 occasions, we had the head of the executive coming out very clearly to say that, you see, I can do away with parliament.
Yes.
That takes you back.
Yes, it happened.
And then you have the head of executive also coming out to say that, you know, I need to sort out the judges when the judges didn't deliver a ruling that was politically correct in terms of I think it was the age limit case.
In Mbale.
Yes, some of the judges had dissenting voices.
Oh, yes.
And the head of the executive came out to say, hey, I will sort out these judges. Now that means you have an overbearing executive. An executive that actually seems to be the head prefect of the other organs of government.
Now, how bad is that? Because everybody has a supervisor. I mean, how bad is that?
That, it's very bad in a democracy. It is bad because all these institutions, these organs, are supposed in themselves to be independent of each other. They are supposed to check each other. No, none of them is higher than the others. But what you continuously see in Uganda is that you seem to have an overbearing executive. So that means the other organs are actually weaker. But that aside, you are in a situation whereby you are supposed to have a political party which is in power, remaining as a political party. Uganda is a very interesting case. You have a political party that is fused with the other organs of government. So you see the political party in power being mirrored in the executive organ fully, being mirrored in the judiciary through cadre judges who you might have heard about, being mirrored in parliament by way of, you see, when for instance the National Resistance Movement caucus is sitting outside the parliamentary setting, the decisions that they make in their caucus are actually just come back to parliament to get a stamp of authenticity within the legislature.
That is lobbying. Lobbying is allowed. You can lobby.
Lobbying is allowed.
As long as you are following the rule of law.
Absolutely, lobbying is allowed. But what we have seen in recent times is that, you know, when the NRM caucus, for instance, sits, parliamentary business comes to
a standstill.
The
because of the majority.
But that also shows you that the party, in a way, is using its leverage of numbers to curtail national business in parliament, which is not a good thing. So, some of those things actually, again, weaken the case of Uganda as a democracy. When you go to elections, we've seen in previous elections many challenges rearing their ugly head. A lot of corruption in form of voter bribery, manipulation of votes.
On all sides?
On all sides. Use of excessive amounts of money. On both sides, by the way, of the political divide, whether it is the party in power or the opposition. You have had incidents whereby actually there's been incidents of vote rigging, outright vote rigging.
Of course.
You see, and those are not actually things that fertilize democracy. They actually endanger democracy.
Yes, take us back very many years ago.
Because if people vote and they feel that their vote doesn't count, then you are likely to see more and more people stepping away from going to vote. In recent by-elections that I've actually gone for, people have asked us when we have gone to observe these elections, do these elections matter anymore?
Okay.
Because we already know who is going to be announced. See? And you must have heard about, of course, the incidents of the 2016 elections,
yes,
where you have an election that has been organized for 5 years, but then you have Kampala, Wakiso, arriving on the election day without polling materials. And this could be a logistical issue.
yes.
But you see, elections also run so much on the wheels of perception. You won't be able to convince somebody that this was purely a logistical, operational issue.
It can be tactical.
Yeah, people will think that, no, this was tactical. Of course, past statistics have shown us that the opposition is fairly pronounced in Kampala and Wakiso. And that is why election materials did not arrive in time in those areas. It could be a perception issue. By the time you finish convincing people that it was actually logistical, operational,
they won't agree.
The city will be on fire.
That's very true.
So some of those things actually undermine people's positive attitude towards our democracy.
Brings me actually talk about opposition in Wakiso and Kampala. The opposition is pushing for electoral reforms. Government is saying there's no money for electoral reforms. Come 2021 elections, without these reforms, do you think it will be fair and fair?
You see, it's not just the opposition that is pushing for electoral reforms.
They're spearheading that.
The opposition political parties have come out and they have submitted their electoral reform recommendations to Parliament in previous electoral cycles. The Supreme Court, when it was making a judgment on the 2016 presidential election petition,
Mbabazi versus
Museveni,
yes,
came out with a raft of recommendations. Civil society itself, we ran what was called the Free and Fair Elections campaign prior to the 2016 elections. And we came up with a number of recommendations that need to be addressed for us to have better elections. Government institutions such as the Electoral Commission, the National Consultative Forum, have also come up with recommendations for reform in elections. And the question is, how come we are not seeing any changes? How come we're not seeing Parliament?
It was on the floor of Parliament recently.
Taking on.
It was on the floor of Parliament recently, and the they said there's no money, and they said they wanted more time for the reforms to come before Parliament.
Yes, well, you see, right from over 10 years ago, electoral reforms have been on the table. And there's two things that we seem to notice, a trend actually. That one, there is either no time to enact those amendments, or there is never the money to support those reforms. Right from the 2011 elections, we went into 2016, it was the same song. Now we are coming to 2021, and that song has already started playing.
Oh, yes.
That is why it becomes very difficult for Ugandans to actually believe at this point that indeed government is being honest when it says there is no money to take care of these electoral reforms.
Okay.
Because they've been on the table for a very long time.
Okay.
And yet, when you look at some of the issues that require money in this country, money is found very quickly. The other day, through Parliament, government was able to get 280 billion shillings. In a matter of hours, this money was going to pay an installment for an aeroplane, the Uganda Airlines.
Oh yes, which is a good thing.
It's a good thing. But the amount of time it took for government
to get that money
is very, very short. But here you are with electoral reforms that have been on the table for over 10 years. And
the same song.
You're hearing the same song, there's no money.
Oh yeah.
Can you believe that?
Well, I can't. Before I go for commercial break, if come 2021, they are not there, do you think it will be free and fair? Briefly.
If we go to the 2021 elections without many of the key reforms that have been proposed by the Supreme Court, by the election observation missions, by political parties, civil society organizations, the Electoral Commission, National Consultative Forum, I think we are headed for a very weak election.
Well, I'm having Mr. Chrispin Kaheru in the box. I will be right back after a short break. Thank you for watching STV, and thank you for being in the box. My name is Noah Sanyuru. Once again, we are always here every Monday from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. when we talk about national issues. And in the box, we have Mr. Chrispin Kaheru, coordinator, Citizen Coalition for Electoral Democracy in Uganda, CCEDU. Once again, you most welcome.
Thank you.
Where we stopped, we're talking about these laws that should be changed. I want us to be very clear about this. What are these specific laws that have to be changed before 2021?
There are quite a number of laws that we need to look at. Yeah, increasingly, there is a challenge of people using excessive amounts of money in elections. And if they were using that money for the right purpose, it wouldn't be a problem. But here we are, people who have the advantage of having a lot of money, using it to bribe voters, you know, in different forms. It could be bribing voters one-on-one, where you pay a voter to go and vote for you.
That's true.
It could be bribing voters in blocks, where you go and you contribute to a fundraising that is happening at a local church, at a local school, at a local mosque, at a, you know, in a self-help community group, the Niginas, the circles. That is also voter bribery, as long as it happens during the campaign time. Now, we need to regulate two things. One, the source of that illicit money that comes and actually contaminates our elections, but also two, we need to regulate how that money is actually used during elections.
But those laws are
and
there.
Therefore, actually those laws are not there.
There.
We don't have those laws.
They
are not
regulating the money used in a campaign.
We don't have those laws. You see, no, you are free to use 1 billion shillings if you are campaigning at the district level to become a councillor. Can you imagine?
Terrible.
In 2011, there was a candidate who was vying for the position of mayor of Kampala. And she was asked on one of the radio stations, how much do you spend every day on the campaign trail? And she answered that question, saying that she spends 200 million shillings per day on her campaign trail. If you spend 200 million shillings
per day
for a 30-day campaign, how much is that?
That's a lot of money involved.
So, and what is that you are chasing, where you will be able to spend 200 million shillings per campaign day?
It's like do or die.
Exactly, it's a do or die. So that is why we are saying it's important that we regulate the amount of money that is used in elections. One, because if people spend more, the likelihood that those people will go in those elective offices and seek to recoup what they have spent is very high.
That's very true.
But also, this business of letting people spend money unregulated promotes corruption.
That's very true.
Voter bribery. All that comes from there. And yet you're supposed, like we said, you are supposed to elect people because of their ideas, not because of the amount of money they have or they give you or how deep their pockets are.
That's very true. Let's talk about.
Secondly,
okay,
we also need laws that relate to the behavior of political parties. When it comes to elections, political parties throw all the rules of the game out through the windows.
Survival for the fittest, Mr. Kaheru.
That's it.
Yeah.
We now go
Survival
to
for
a
the
jungle.
fittest.
And you know why? This is because we do not have laws that actually regulate the conduct of political parties, especially during election time. The political party code of conduct has been sitting in Parliament for the last over 5 years. It has not been adopted.
Okay.
That must be adopted. So that when political parties go to an election, they know that they owe the country a responsibility of being professional, of being, of acting as political parties, not as animals in a jungle where it is survival for the fittest. The other law I think that we need is a law that is going to that integrates technology in our elections. Right now, many countries are actually complaining about technology and how technology is being used to manipulate votes.
That's very true.
You've had those complaints in neighboring Kenya.
Of course.
Now,
it was a very big problem in Kenya, actually.
Yes. What that means is that Uganda, as elections become more and more competitive, you're going to get some very wise fellows who are also going to find a way of how to manipulate technology in their favor. So we must have a law that regulates the integration of technology in our elections, so that when somebody is attempting to hack, to manipulate technology, we know that we have a law. And laws come with the punishments if you violate them.
Of course. Does that involve a political party that is standing to do its own tally center? Is it linked
of course,
anyway?
Because most of the tally centers actually run on technology.
Oh yes.
They receive results, they tally results, all that is technology. And right now, where we are in Uganda, all that kind of technology that is deployed in elections doesn't have a law. It doesn't have a legal framework. So anyone can do anything.
Can do whatever they want.
And but let me emphasize this. It's not about having these laws. It's about having them and implementing them in a fair manner.
Right. Briefly talk about violence.
You see, increasingly, you can see that there is a trend that is attached to violence.
Oh yes.
The 2016 election that we had in this country was violent, but
to a certain level,
to a certain extent.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, it was not as violent as the 2001 elections and 2006 elections. But after the 2016 elections, we begin to see a very worrying trend, where even the smallest of the small by-elections are now becoming a do or die.
Oh, yes.
People going
that's where the concern is actually.
Exactly. People going with guns in elections and across the political divide. You know, people taking an election as if it is a civil war.
Oh, yes.
You know, you see the opposition armed to the teeth. You see the NRM armed to the teeth. You're like, but this is just an election.
Which is going to end.
You can actually cast your vote, go back to your home, and you'll have finished playing your part. Why should it be a big issue, a do or die? Now, violence is becoming a very worrying trend in Uganda. And we are saying that we need to put in place a framework whereby, one, people are able to freely vent their concerns, even outside the election period. If we create dialogue spaces, you remember the Bimeza we used to have?
Oh, yes, that's very true.
Where people come, they go and vent, they build the trust, they create tolerance among
themselves.
They put their leaders on the spot.
Oh, yes.
That will deflate, you know, that kind of emotion, anger that people go with to an election.
Okay, I have this. According to your research, actually, CCEDU research, what is the women's participation in elections? For example, is there enough gender balance in the electoral process via women?
We have seen consistently that women have actually not been participating as high as men, both at the leadership level, but also in terms of women coming out to vote.
Oh, yes.
So it's at both tracks that we see that women have not been as active
as they should have been,
or as their male counterparts. If you look at their level of participation in terms of I think running for elective offices for 2016, we had the total number of candidates was, I think, somewhere around in the region of 1,500. Okay. All the people that ran for parliamentary seats at the parliamentary level. And I think it was only less than 30% of that number that were female. That is worrying. Why aren't women running to take leadership roles?
Oh, yes.
But secondly, even when you look at the number of voters that come out, the demographics of the voters, it is actually less women coming out to vote than men. Okay. But there is also explanations to that. One, Uganda is a patriarchal society. And men have always been, I am the one who elects the leader. Dominant. I am the one who runs for an elective office. There's been that sort of dominance by men, which we are trying to actually break. Okay. To say, look, yes, we live in a society where there is men and women. And we need to all participate equally. When it comes to important things like elections, we want to see the women queuing up in their polling stations. Yes. We want to see women going to attend and listen in to campaign meetings. Sometimes men actually deny their women from participating in campaigns, in running for elective offices, in going to vote, which is a wrong thing. Okay. Because we are equal and we all want a better society. We all want a better Uganda. It's not only the responsibility of men for making the country better. That responsibility lies with both men and the women.
Looking at the current political parties' wrangles, you know what is happening. You see somebody goes to a media house, is attacked by some people. The other goes to a media house, is bull, whatever. Do you see us 2021 having the same understanding between certain political parties to have one candidate? I'm sorry to take you to that level.
Well, I think it's a worrying trend that the political parties are bickering among themselves.
Oh, yes.
I think strength comes from unity. We want to see a strong, united opposition. We want to see a strong, united national resistance movement that does not that is not fractured, that does not have cliques, that has a consistent kind of message, ideological orientation, and so on and so forth. And so for me, coming from that platform, I want to see very strong parties. I do not want to see parties that concentrate on fighting each other on the basis of personalities. No, we should be dealing with issues. There is plenty of
not
issues.
Not personalities, issues.
There's plenty
Put
of
your issues on table and people buy them.
Correctly. There's plenty of issues that we should be discussing. There's plenty of issues that political parties should be seeking to handle, not fighting themselves. So for me, I find this a very weak orientation on the side of the political parties that are bickering among themselves. I think they should be concentrating on understanding the issues that have been put forward on the table by Ugandans. They should be actually articulating what they have in store to address those issues and their plans for the next leadership period. That is what I would want to hear from political parties.
What do they have for the economy?
Exactly.
What do they have for the politics? What they have for agriculture? And all these
those are the positions that people want to hear. People want to hear those positions.
Not like I'm the best, I'm the best.
Exactly. That is what people will base on to elect those political parties. They will not base on individuals. I think we are taking the political debate too low. When we start concentrating on personalities, so and so is fighting the other one, the other one is fighting, creating fractures and cliques, I think we then lose the focus of the debate. The debate should be, how do we make our country better?
I have one last question before we can have our last say from you. In the previous elections, you fully observed the process. What challenges did you overcome and what has failed? We shall end with that.
Well, we observed the electoral process. We made our recommendations. Those recommendations are still in form of mere recommendations. They have not been addressed. The recommendations that we made in terms of making our elections better, transparent, more participatory,
all the reports
are all still in report form. Nothing has changed significantly. And for us, that worries us, that concerns us. Question is, how do we go to the next election when we still have a backlog of unresolved business from the 2016 elections and even the other elections that came before 2016. So those are the questions that we continue asking ourselves, and that partly explains why you're seeing violence on the rise during elections, use of illicit money and excessive money on the rise during election, corruption is on the rise during elections. The people's reluctance to go out and participate in elections is also increasing. Why? Because people seem to be losing that excitement around elections and whether their vote actually counts. So all these put together cause a worry for us ahead of the 2021 elections. We have observed, we have made our recommendations. These recommendations still remain on the paper. Well, what do? We
won't go much into that because of time. Any last word to whoever is watching STV?
I think for me the most...
to Ugandans. Yes.
I think Ugandans have a responsibility to take electoral matters into their own hands. Ugandans have a responsibility to know that politics is too important to leave to politicians. So I think for me that is the core message, that for as long as we leave politicians to manage our political and electoral affairs, then we are going to remain behind as citizens of this country. We must take control of our country and the direction in which it is heading.
I think I agree with Mr. Chrispin Kaheru. We are all stakeholders in this. I would like to thank Mr. Chrispin Kaheru coordinator, Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy in Uganda, CCEDU, for being in the box. We shall meet again next Monday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. I've been Noah Senyor. Stay well. Bye.
Thank you for watching Standard Television. Yes, we can.
Mugenda wa mwe ne mama uno mumutwale nze naine mbalabe zonna zagenda amma mukyala bani abakukyusa Brenda's Beauty World bano bakafulu mu kujjanjaba endwadde z'olususu batunda ebizigo ebijjanjaba endwadde z'olususu ako n'okusomesa abaana ensijanjaba y'ensusu oyina embalabe ebizigo byagwokya mugaba oba olusolo gw'omugejjogejjo olubuto lunene basala ne weyi bano basangibwa ku Mabirizi Complex
bw'abeetaaze bafune ku 077